there's a reason we haven't had immigration reform in over 35 years. And it's that immigrants haven't been in power financially, and people who have money control the laws.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of what really motivates me in immigrant finance too, is like the more immigrants we have building wealth, the more people are going to have influence on what the laws are so we can make better laws.
Welcome, Adina, to the Leo podcast. I'm so happy to have you here today. It's been a long time coming. We've known each other for a while through online, and I just finished your immigrant finance certification program, which I'm super stoked with. Your beta program, that is amazing. I'm so happy that you thought of me for that program. I
Oh,
recommend it to anyone that also just wants to like advocate for immigrant finances and just go out there and like you say all the time, there just needs to be more of us out there, and you're definitely bringing that. But before we get into even more specifics to that, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
thank you so much, Kevin. It's really such an honor to be on here, and I respect your work so much. And I've like really looked up to all the educational opportunities you're bringing to the community, and have always viewed you as like such a colleague and peer in this space. So thanks for
Thank
having me
you.
on, and thanks for also being on my podcast years ago now.
Hmm.
And I'll never forget that podcast. It was an amazing episode. So everyone has to go listen to that. Maybe we
Yes.
can link to that too.
Oh yeah, I will definitely.
Yeah, I'd have to dig up the link. But
Hmm.
yeah, thanks for having me on. And a little about me. My name is Adina Appelbaum. I'm an immigration attorney and accredited financial counselor. So I specialize in through my work in immigrant finance, helping immigrants with learning how to invest and build wealth. And then in my immigration work, I do impact litigation to try to improve the law for immigrants. So I've been doing that work now for almost 10 years, focus on people at risk of detention and deportation. So, like, worst case scenario stuff. Obviously, crazy things going on right now. I'm sure we're going to talk about more that has really brought that to the forefront. But with immigrant finance, I've been doing that with my husband Mouse since 2018. And we started that during the first Trump administration, for various reasons we can get into. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's a perfect segue. Because my next question was going to be how do you as an immigration lawyer lead? How did that work lead to you co-founding Immigrant Finance, which it's like your other half because you put in so much work. I don't even know how you find the time to do these things.
Oh my gosh. We've experimented with a lot of different strategies to leverage our time over the years, and more and more Mao has actually been doing a lot of our marketing stuff, which has
Hmm.
been a huge help. But it started because, well, okay, so it was the first Trump administration. I was actually in a
Hmm.
very similar position now. I was working on all these lawsuits, and horrible things were happening to the community.
I don't know if that's like a bad thing or a good thing that we're like looking back at it and we're like, well, I'm in the same spot that I was like a couple of years
Yeah,
like
it's like so much
politically.
worse.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
It's so
Anyways.
much worse. But it was a similar, like we're in a war and
Yeah.
um just, emergency mode, fighting nights and weekends on the legal side, and it being very, very dark, as, everyone listening in the immigrant community knows. I don't need to repeat that. But
Yeah.
there are several factors. One was I was really searching for a way to do something more positive to help immigrants instead of just being in defense mode. And then personally, Mao and I had been struggling with money for many, many years after
Hmm.
he immigrated to the US from Ecuador. And we're very open about our story. We talk about it a lot. And he came in 2013. I was in law school at the time, and we could not find information anywhere about whether he could
Mm.
have a credit card or invest or buy a home or any of that. And we like really felt stuck and a lot of anxiety for many years with that. And
Yeah.
there I was, studying with like the best immigration law professors in the country. They couldn't tell me if he could like have a bank account, They're
Wow.
like, know anyone who can tell
Wow.
me that. And I would ask around all immigration attorneys I knew, and no one knew anything about finances. And then I would go talk to any like finance tax people I could find, and they would just be like, hands up, we don't know how to help immigrants. Like, they can't do any of this. And I was like,
Yeah.
this doesn't make sense. So we basically started piecing together how the systems worked for ourselves for many years and like figured that out. And then we started wanting to share that to help other people. We first began with an anonymous blog in 2018.
Okay.
We were too scared to put our names and
Yeah.
faces in it.
Yeah, I know. I don't blame you.
Any
Yep.
online creator, you go through your
Yep.
visibility, fear journey.
Mm-hmm.
So went through all that and then it just kind of grew from there and eventually started Immigrant Finance School, which is our signature program in 2020. And doing that in small group coaching and have been doing it ever since, basically. So that's kind of the story. But it was really like sharing what we had figured out personally to help others so they would be less alone, and then a form of like resistance during the first administration.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's like taking your personal experience, and then kind of shaping them. Kind of your personal experience kind of shaped your passion for
Hmm.
helping immigrants navigate, the financial system, but also you kind of combined it with what you know from the legal system, and
Yeah.
then out of a need. So no, that's it's just astonishing to me that like you mentioned that you went around to like your colleagues and asking them like can like an immigrant open like a bank account, and like I don't know, like like
Yeah.
that is amazing. Wow.
It's so full circle that you started talking about the certification program that we
Hmm.
just started, that you've done. Thank you for being in the beta group. It's
Oh yeah.
been so
No.
much. Because now we're getting to teach other people how to share this information, and
Yep.
it's like so massive. I haven't had time to process it because I've been on all these lawsuits.
Hmm. Hmm.
But like, yeah, I'm taking a little time off next week, and I think I'm gonna be like,
Good.
holy,
Good.
like
Oh.
this information's finally getting out.
No, you need that time off. Like I swear, and I'm not even kidding to all the listeners out there. Like every other day, I just see your story, and it's just like, well, I'm suing the government again. Like it's just like every other day. Like, no, you're an inspiration. You're an inspiration. So,
It luckily a part of like large coalitions that are doing that. There's a
yeah,
lot of people fighting back, so everyone should
yeah,
know that. Like there are a lot of people fighting like they've never fought in their lives, and it's really amazing.
yeah.
And we're winning in a lot
Hmm.
of that. It's horrible what's happening, but like the legal claims are very good.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that there's a big pushback because that's what they don't want is that pushback, and the
Mhm.
fact that you're out there and doing the groundwork, and you're seeing it firsthand, saying that there are people here that are pushing back, and even though it might maybe not be as reported, but people are doing the work. um but that kind of just brings me to with the current administration, we've obviously seen a lot of policy shifts. What are some of the biggest changes that you're seeing in immigration law, like right now, just like in general, that you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I think probably the number one thing is just the over aggressive, like violent enforcement of the immigration
Mm,
laws in detaining more people. Um, I mean, it's except for the last Trump administration, like there's always not always been, but like for many years there's been priorities, right? So there's
yeah,
like some kind of expectation of who is a target for what reason and who is not, and kind of like knowing, if somebody doesn't have criminal convictions or whatever, they're
right.
very unlikely to get detained. And just like in the first administration, we're back to there's no priorities. Everybody is a target. And that's the whole point.
Mm,
You want everyone to feel afraid. They want to encourage people to self-deport. They're
right.
never going to have the resources to actually carry out all the things they say. And so a lot of this is a fear game. So I think
Mm,
probably actually the accumulation of all the many, many forms of legal and policy attacks happening is this cumulative fear that they're causing that is the most damaging. And it like, and I know everyone listening like has is gonna feel what I feel, but like it's heartbreaking when you talk to someone who's in complete fear, and they're scared for them and their family, and
Yeah.
it's like very unlikely anything's actually gonna ever happen to them, right? And they're
Mm-hmm.
having to start making these life-changing decisions, right, based on that, and that's I think the worst part. And then what's happening to actual people who are being targeted, there's horrible things happening that in range of areas, everything from the Alien Enemies Act stuff. I'm sure you're
Yep.
tracking, sending people to the torture prison in El Salvador, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, including people with no criminal history, right? To like awful conditions in
Yep. Just for
detention.
having like tattoos or something like
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah,
Yeah.
including someone who had one withholding of removal
Mm-hmm.
protection and had an order from an immigration judge saying he cannot be deported to El Salvador.
Yep.
So just the disregard for law, for not following court orders. I mean, it's all of these unprecedented things. But I think that's legally as a lawyer, that's the part that it is maybe most scary is the government not following court orders.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, and then also trying to kind of dismantle this judicial system by trying to discredit a lot of like the judges saying like why are
Yeah.
they like pushing back, or why are they saying that that's not legal? Like why? Because it's not. Like there's checks and
Yeah.
balances in this country. Like you can't, despite what you think, you can't just do what you want. But I mean, like you mentioned, the biggest weapon on their hands that they're trying to just roll out is fear, right? They're
Yeah.
trying to increase fear, and misinformation within the immigrant communities.
Hmm.
How do you address that with like people that come to you and they're like, I'm scared, and maybe that's something that's impacted them, right? Just fear has been constantly on them.
Yeah. Well, I speak to most people in the context of immigrant finance these days, from the
Mm-hmm.
community because my legal work is more high level now.
Yep.
Um, but I think so. I'm speaking to them in the context of a financial conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it goes back to the same reason we started immigrant finance and what we've always been saying. It's just more true than ever that like there are things you can do to claim your power in the financial system. It's like I still have not found something that is more tangible and concrete people can do when they're undocumented, when they have little options legally, when there's no path, to lawful status. Like that is something where all the doors are open is the financial system. And now from the certification program, like there's nothing immigrants can't do
Yeah.
when it comes to investing, real estate, business, like it's all available.
Mm-hmm.
So I just try to help people shift toward that because that's something you can do that
Yeah.
will change your life, right? And
Mm-hmm.
change your family's life. And we can't control the horrible, inhumane destruction happening, right?
Yeah.
We can fight, we can advocate, but at the end of the day, it's the forces are way larger than any of us individually, right? But what we
Yeah.
can do is like claim our power individually. And I think that's kind of that antidote to the fear. It's like and even me as someone, we were talking about this a little bit before recording, like even me, I'm someone who's very privileged. I'm a citizen, I'm a lawyer, I understand how the legal and financial system work.
Mm-hmm.
But like doing this work, of course, I go into fear too. So I have a taste of what people are experiencing.
Yep.
And the antidote is stepping into power. And like it's that
Mm-hmm.
constant dance. Like I don't think the goal is to get rid of the fears, it's not realistic and we're human and it would be almost concerning if someone didn't feel any fear right now, right? Um,
Yeah.
but like it's about can you like tip the scales a bit and also feel
Mm.
some power and take actions that give you power because then they don't win,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah. No, I love that you said about tipping the scales. Um, ultimately that's what it's about. It's tipping the scales, taking the controls into your own hands, whether it be financially, politically. It's all intertwined.
Yes,
And
you
it comes
know.
down to like you taking that stance, and saying, just getting that like mind shift, right? Um,
Yeah.
which brings me to you speaking about like finance, and tipping the scales. Like, what's you've been doing your work for so many like years now, with a lot of clients. I'm curious to see what the most common financial barriers that immigrants face, when they arrive in the US, is that you would think kind of like tip that scale.
For people who are like recently arriving.
Yep. Like, what's their biggest barrier when they arrive?
Yeah. Huh, that's such a good question.
Financially, like, what's their, maybe some, like, maybe it's like a mindset
Yeah, my
shift or
mind,
something like that.
yeah, I think from what I've seen, including with my own husband, it's like when you so much of your mental space has to go toward like adjusting to new country and figuring out
Mm-hmm.
the systems here and just like surviving. It's really hard to carve out mental space for like growth and wealth building, and
Mm-hmm.
investing. But of course, there are really savvy people out there who do
Yeah.
that, make it happen. So I think it's really about like getting in that headspace is very challenging when you have to figure out, how you're gonna make money, where you're gonna live, like who you can trust, right? But like probably the first thing is just getting a bank account and then a credit
Mm-hmm.
card
Yeah.
really opens a lot of options for people. It's pretty hard to function in this country without a credit card. You can, but it's a lot easier with one.
Yep.
And so many immigrants are told they're not allowed to have one, which is not true.
Yep. And then, I mean, just to be clear, like, immigrants can open a bank account, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And so what's needed for these things, the same thing with investing and starting a business is having an ITIN number. If someone's
Mm-hmm.
not eligible for a social security number, that stands for individual taxpayer identification number. It's an alternative ID number with the IRS for people who can't qualify for socials.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the work that you do is just, that's why I love just having you on here, and like the work that you do, again, it's just a lot of that is just kind of debunking these myths. Just kind of also navigating the financial system, growing up, just doing it for myself, as a student, and seeing like my colleagues doing it, and I'm like, well, I wonder if I could do it, and it's just being curious.
Yeah.
And also just having it to like do it for my parents. There's so many like misconceptions,
Hmm.
that I've kind of encountered in the way, of trying to just kind of break down barriers myself. But like,
Sure.
yeah, so how do you like go about like debunking some of these, with with like your students, or just anyone like in your
Yeah.
community?
Well, there's no one size fits all, of course. I know that's
Mm-hmm.
not satisfying to hear, but like I don't know. I think it depends on the person, like what the myth is, like how they feel about it,
Yeah.
right?
Like investing, like, let me throw that at you. Like,
Okay.
can immigrants invest? Like,
Yes. Yeah, so I mean there's a lot of variations like within that of
yeah.
like people are told like, oh, like okay, but you have to have a lot of money saved.
Mm-hmm.
Or you need a green card or social security number, which you don't. You need the ITIN, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like people like me don't invest, or like, I'm gonna even if I get the account open, like I'm not gonna be able to understand, or I'm gonna mess it up, or I'm gonna do something that puts me in danger, or I'm gonna have an immigration problem. Like there's so many different fears, right?
Yeah.
It depends which one, but like I think it's just talking through it and like sharing like what is actual true. But of course, like whether it's you educating someone or someone listening, educating their parents or something, like the person has to trust you,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And there's also so much information being given to them of the opposite that's not true, that
Mm-hmm.
like sometimes coming in with the facts, the evidence is helpful. I'll literally like whip out an investment calculator and screen share with someone. I think you
Yeah.
saw me do that.
Yeah, yeah, I have,
And I'll be
yep.
like, okay, so yeah, you think it's not possible for you? Like, so how much do you think you could invest per month. Like, maybe we'll
Yeah.
say, okay, maybe like 200. And then we like put in the calculator and like, oh, this is what you would have in 10 years. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like that's the biggest thing I feel for myself that's worked also with like just family is kind of what you mentioned too in our certification program is being like that change maker, like being the one that's like
Yes,
leading. I think that's the
yes,
biggest thing that's worked, and I've seen worked like with other people too, especially like
yeah.
if you're younger, um, that if you just kind of take the lead and show them
Hmm.
like, hey, look, I put like $1,000 in here and now it's like $1,200 like in this
Yeah,
amount of time, I don't know, maybe you
free
might want
money.
to
Yeah,
yeah.
show the receipts. Exactly.
Yes. How can someone that doesn't have a social security number start then like they're investing or like building their credit and just kind of start thinking about their future in the US?
Yes, it really only comes up with like getting the account open. So as
Mhm.
long as they have an ITIN,
Mhm.
they can get those open, and then they're almost in the same position as any American, just having to learn how personal finances work,
Yeah.
right? So, a really good way to get started with building credit is if you've never had a credit card, is something called a secured credit card.
Mm.
That's actually what my husband Mao did when he came. And he has like he's had a better credit score than me like forever. He like was so nervous about making sure he paid on time. He would like pay it off every time he bought something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a great way to get started. You can like as long as you pay it off, they'll quickly like graduate you to a regular credit card. Um, and yeah, with investing, I mean, there's so many free resources online. It can be very
Mhm.
overwhelming though, but like watching YouTube videos about investing can be really helpful. There's so many money coaches out there too.
Yep, like yourself.
Yeah.
Tell us about like your experience then as an example with Maui, about like how did you get him comfortable with like the system then? What was your steps like? Because you grew up here, right? So you were kind of
Yeah.
like familiar a little bit, maybe not, maybe, but
Well, yeah, so I'm from Maryland. I come from I'm like third generation. My great grandparents
hmm
were refugees who came through Ellis Island. They came fleeing for their lives with nothing. So a lot of money mindset shit passed down from that that I've had to
right,
work
yeah.
through over the years. But like really the to answer your questions kind of more about gender, is like
Okay.
I just kind of like, I think most women grew up with this idea like I didn't have to figure out finances and that I'm not good at math because I'm a woman and I would
hmm
marry someone who took care of that,
hmm
basically,
hmm hmm
And I don't think it was ever like told to me explicitly, but that was just sort of what I saw.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I only realized like way later in life, like I'm actually kind of good at math and like numbers and then, oh my gosh, I'm in love with someone who's an immigrant.
hmm
And well, actually, he hadn't even immigrated to the US yet. We met in Ecuador.
Oh my God. Wait, did you
Um,
go over there and you met him over
we
there?
met there through a friend of mine. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. I was there
Wow.
for an internship and he had like interned with one of my friends from college and he was back in Ecuador at the same time. Anyway, it's a long story, but
Aw. Romantic.
yeah, but like I was like at some point when we were going through that period really struggling that led to immigrant finance,
Yeah.
I had to realize just like the children of immigrants you're referring to, I think, have to
hmm
do like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to be the leader on this. I
Right.
never thought I would be, right? But like I think it kind of goes back to the power conversation of like that's really scary to realize, especially when you don't know what you're doing, like I didn't.
Yeah.
Um, but first of all, it is something that can be learned, right? And it's not as hard as they make it sound. I think they make it sound hard for a reason. So certain
hmm
groups don't learn how to make money, right? Or
hmm
take care of money, whatever. Um, but yeah, I just had to kind of claim it at some point. Like, I'm gonna have to be the leader here. And that's what I've seen, like what you're saying really works for a lot of folks in the immigrant community is to just be like, all right, I'm gonna be the one and I'm gonna change my family's legacy. And instead of this being a burden, this is actually like a leadership opportunity. So it's like flipping that to power.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's just like I said, taking that role I and that just kind of speaks volumes to someone who's needing to kind of show the way through the system. And much like you, I also had to just kind of learn through it and reading it, and it helps because you can also like explaining it to other people kind of helps you remember it more,
Oh
and
yeah,
like and it helps you kind of
true.
like realize like, oh hey, maybe like bring up like a new question or something, you know?
Yes. No, totally. I always say the best way to learn is to teach. I say this to
Mm.
like lawyers I work with as well.
Hmm.
And like, here, go do a panel on this topic that you don't
Yeah.
really understand. You'll be an expert in no time. You know,
Yep, exactly.
seriously, the best way. You know, you have a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why I created it, just to kind
Yeah.
of teach myself and kind of
Yeah,
like teach people in the process.
exactly.
If you could have like one piece of advice for immigrants trying to take control of their legal and financial future, what would be like your biggest piece of advice just to
Such
take
a good
control?
question. Yeah, it's such a good question.
Yeah.
I feel like my answer would be different any day you ask that because there's so
Yeah,
many things.
right.
But I'll
So
tell
what's
you
it
my
today? What's it today?
today. Connect to the why. I mean, I think in general with motivation on anything, like it's really it's difficult to follow through and do the hard work if
Mm,
you don't have like a larger mission or why guiding you.
yeah.
So I think like spending more time on that is going to make it a lot easier to then go do it, you know? So
Yeah.
if you're not really sure what that is, like I think that's a really good use of time to figure out like why do you want to be in a better position financially? What is it for you and your future? Is it for your family, your future kids, your parents, like all of it? You know, is it for immigrant power? You know, like and then I'll just make a plug too. I think everyone,
Yeah.
especially right now, should be thinking about, in addition to themselves and their family, like the larger impact on the laws. Like I really believe that there's a reason we haven't had immigration reform in over 35 years.
Mm,
And it's that immigrants haven't been in power financially and people who have money control the laws.
mm-hmm.
And so that's part of what really motivates me in immigrant finance too, is like the more immigrants we have building wealth, the more people are going to have influence on what the laws are so we can make better laws.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then just kind of like starting that movement and making people more confident because like you said, it's just about like whoever has money can make changes and you know also a lot of things that we've connected on between you and I that we have similarities is just that aspect too is that like money does you can do a lot even just like even if you're not rich but if you have like a business you hire people you can show that you hire like you employ like other citizens or something like
Yeah.
that right like that in itself is power right.
Yes, absolutely. And
Hmm.
it's like very compelling if someone has an immigration case to be able to show that, like, you're financially independent. Yeah, you are contributing to the economy. You're maybe employing US citizens, whatever it is, giving people jobs, like helping your neighbors. And it's kind of like a larger thing too. Like if we look at the history of immigration laws, I
Mm.
mean, from the start, they've been racist and about disempowering people of color, right?
Hmm.
And our whole economy is based on keeping immigrants in a vulnerable position legally so they
That
can be
right there.
exploited, right?
Hmm.
And so like how do we flip all of that?
Hmm.
Right? It's like we got to say no to that dynamic. And of course, people need to work and do those jobs when they don't have an option, they don't have papers and stuff. And you got to do what you got to do and survive and fight for your family. But like you can be investing along the way and not have to work until you're in your 70s, you know?
Yep. No, yeah, absolutely. And like setting aside just kind of like you said some money and maybe even just to employ yourself because a lot
Yeah.
of times I think immigrants are like and I think there's a statistic out there where it's we kind of create the most businesses as well
Yeah.
like in
A
the
lot of
US
that.
because we already have like the mindset for it, you know what I mean?
Oh
Like we
my
already
God.
and like the
Yeah.
want to do it. It's just needing, like you said, like it's needing someone to tell you that you can do it. That's the biggest thing.
And it's like, it's not your fault if you didn't grow up with generations of parents and grandparents who can tell you how to get rich in this country. Like,
Yeah.
it's a disadvantage. It's not people's fault. And so we
Hmm.
just got to get people information, which is why we need more certified immigrant finance
Hmm.
professionals like you, um, and just know it's just knowing the how, it's knowing the guidance. That's the missing piece for most people. It's not the will or the motivation or ability to work hard or
Right.
savvy or any of that.
Hmm.
It's just like get that info out.
Yep, exactly. Just getting it out. Like I said, I feel it like we have it in us to do it, and then it's just a matter of being told that hey, you're able to do it, and maybe look into this and that to do it. Which kind of brings me into like what resources or tools do you recommend for immigrants to just looking to educate themselves about financials or legal matters?
Yeah. Well, I'll give a shout out to like our blog and our stuff and
Yes,
some
please.
other things. Like, so yeah, Mal has been doing a weekly blog for a while now, and there's some really valuable lessons in there. We work on it together every week. I also do YouTube videos, turn them into videos. So that's all free. Check out our blog, immigrantfinance.com/blog, and our YouTube channel, Immigrant Finance. And you can learn a lot of stuff there to get you started, and including mindset stuff. Um, and I mean, there's so much good stuff out there. There's so many books that are really helpful. Um, and for investing, I love the book The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. It's a great book for like really all you need to know on investing, I feel
Yeah.
like. Have you read it?
Yeah, I have actually. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
yeah, it's good. It's great.
Um,
Like kind of like Kickstarter
yeah.
into the
Yeah.
system. Yep.
And there's so many, like, just read all the personal finance books if you're interested. That's how I got started initially. There's so many good podcasts out there as well. I think I always say, like, you got to find someone who speaks to you because there's a lot of people out there
Hmm.
giving that information, but like only certain people you're going to resonate with. So just try out all the things and see what clicks.
Yeah. No, and that whole resonating part too, I think also has to do with like putting more people out there just that are like also certified in like immigrant finance to like the program that you created. Um, because I've noticed it too from just helping people around me. Like my dad would bring his friends to me, and he would tell me like, "Hey, can you help my friend? Like, he doesn't know if he can open like a bank account." And he'll give
Yeah.
you money, and most of the time, I'm like, "Look, I'll just help him. Like, he's your friend,
Oh,
and I'll help him." And like, he doesn't have to
yeah.
like give me money or anything. But then and then they insist because like they know like I'm putting my time into it and helping
Yeah,
him
that's
out.
great. I didn't
Um,
know that.
yeah, so that's what he would do. And then same with my mom, like they would bring him to me and be like, my friend wants to like open like a bank account. Like, what do they need to do? And like, is that possible? And then I kind of
That's
just take them through the
cool.
steps as well. Um,
Like you've
but
already been doing the immigrant finance stuff. That's amazing.
a little bit,
Yeah.
but just getting all like your expertise and that mindset piece that you mentioned a lot
Yeah.
really has helped me also just kind of step into their shoes and into their mindset because everyone's mindset is different. Even though I'm an
Yeah.
immigrant, I'm privileged in some ways just for having like DACA.
Hmm.
That's a big privilege on my part. So my mindset might be different than someone who was completely undocumented,
Hmm.
um, and just kind of understanding like that's one of the biggest things that you concentrated on was like mindset and then understanding him and like strategies to understand him. And that really helped me out a lot too. So,
I'm glad to hear that. That's
yeah,
great
I
to hear.
highly recommend your program
Oh, that's
to
so
anyone
nice.
listening.
Thank you so much. And it's true. I always say like 99% of finance and business is psychology
Mm-hmm.
and mindset. And it's that's the hard part. And yeah, like I said, descendant of refugees who
Mm-hmm.
came with nothing. So I've had to work through a lot.
Yep.
Like I grew up with like, my dad freaking out if we left the lights on kind of thing. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Like you can't turn down the thermostat a certain
Oh
amount.
yeah. Like you have to like work through some of that because those types of mentalities, I mean, I guess you can build wealth from that, but it's not very sustainable. It doesn't feel very good. And it's a
Yeah.
lot harder than it has to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like if we think about really what like wealth and abundance is like and more immigrants tapping into that, it's like all about like growth and like momentum, expansion, like that kind of vibe. And so your mindset also has to grow with that because you can do all the perfect strategies, right? But if your mindset's not also growing, like you're not going to
Mm.
see the results because it's like there's going to be like fear underneath it, and that's going to hold you back, from getting that investment account open or whatever.
Yep. No, absolutely. And then just financially empowering yourself by just taking those steps, you know. It's again, it comes back around full circle to like to fear. So, it's just kind of
Mhm.
getting over that. What's your take on like generational wealth and how, you know, how important that is um in just getting to achieve that?
Like given everything going on right now politically or in
Yeah.
general. Yeah, oof. Um, I would say, I mean, how do I answer this? Like, I think it's very understandable for to be something that's hard to think about right now
Mm-hmm.
because of all the fear stuff we've talked about
Yeah.
that this administration is trying to do to make people afraid and make people feel like they're under attack and don't have rights and don't have power. Like it naturally puts people in survival mode
Mm.
in a way that's not people's fault. And so that whole thing we're talking about of like getting into a place of expansion and growth, like that's how generational wealth happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to first be in that place yourself, and then you have to be making moves from that place of expansion that
Yep.
lead to more wealth, that then lead to more wealth that passes to generations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in survival mode and no choice of your own, like that's really hard. I think it's totally okay and fair if people
Yeah.
feel like they can't think about that right now with this going on. Um, I would just say like don't let it be forever. Like it's okay to feel the fear right now and go through what we're going through and just know like there is going to be a time again when people can think about expanding that way. And there's a lot you can do in the meantime. Like you can be afraid still, but still be investing a little bit each month. And that does lead to generational wealth, right?
Yeah, and I think that that piece right there is kind of what I wanted to hear as well, is that like even though there's a lot of fear, there's a lot you can still do,
Yeah.
regardless of the fear, and you can still have that generational wealth mindset within that because there's it's about preparing. I think the biggest thing you can do is prepare in prepare for the future, prepare for the worst case scenario. I think we're all trying to, as immigrants, just, we're always preparing for the worst case scenario. But
Yep.
when it comes to like generational wealth, and then you mentioned this too, there's the things that you can prepare that can continue your journey to generational wealth. Like, for example, you could set up, like that you mentioned, you can set up like trustees that can kind of like run businesses for you, like people that you trust, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you could touch up like a little bit on that.
Yeah. Yeah. You mean like in a worst case scenario?
Yeah. Yeah, like maybe
Yeah.
like you get, God forbid you get deported, but like you own a business or like you own
Right.
houses. Like how does that play out?
Totally. Like there's a lot of simple things people can do legally with family planning, business planning, property planning to make sure that those assets continue. So like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we talked about, in that worst case scenario, like you could potentially still have your business running in the US if you can no longer be in the country and like appoint someone you trust to manage it and still have in person and still have a role from abroad where you're
Mm-hmm.
giving strategic guidance or whatever, handling the finances, and still make income from that, right?
Yep.
So, there's and property, people own property when they don't live in the US all the time. There's
Yep.
nothing preventing that, right? And investments can continue to grow, right?
Yep.
if anything, that's one plug I would make for people like worrying about the worst case scenario. That is the one thing that's pretty much impossible is an opening an investment account after leaving the US.
Right.
So now is like really the time, even if you're worried about having to leave, like at least get your investment account open while you're here, get it started, and then it could potentially continue growing.
Yep, exactly. There's just numerous ways, like you said, like you prepare for it and then still have that, to still continue kind of like what you built here, even if, kind of worst case scenario, but maybe now with what you've already built, you can even maybe potentially live off of. Like that's pretty
Yeah.
huge. Like,
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
you
I talked
know?
to someone this week where like her and her husband's plan is to, go back to their home country, retire early. Like they're working as hard as they can now and they're going to retire early and go back.
Yeah.
And they'll live off of what they've built here. And one the last thing that came to mind, I want to say that I think is important for folks to think about in this context when we're talking about like fear and worst case scenarios. And there's also like the tariffs and the economy going
Mm-hmm.
on, all that. If you look at how a lot of like multimillionaire, billionaire American families have built their wealth, a lot of them built it during times of recession, depression,
Mm.
contraction. Like, so the Great Depression was actually when a lot of wealthy Americans built their wealth because most people went into fear and contracted, right? And then, but there was like the few people that were like, this is an opportunity to like get the stocks on sale, get the railroads on sale, get the steel companies on sale, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and bought it all up and built that's how they built generational wealth for generations to pass
Yep.
down. So it's kind of like a wealth building principle too, is like when you see everyone else contracting in fear, like that's your time to grow,
Yeah.
even if it feels really scary. And there's a reason most people can't do that, right? But if anyone can, it's immigrants.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. No, definitely. Um, just kind of leaving it at that. Where with everything you said, I love that. Everything you've dropped so many dimes, so many gems. Like you're
Thanks,
so
Kevin.
knowledgeable. Thank you so much for your time, Adina.
Oh, thanks
But
so much.
where can people connect with you and Immigrant Finance if they want to learn more, if they want to sign up for any of the classes or, even the certification program that you have, where can people find you? Just
Thank you so much. Easiest way is just send us a message on Instagram at immigrant.finance, or check out our website, immigrantfinance.com. We have like free consults and our programs are available on there. And yeah, would love to connect and send anyone resources we can. And just thank you for always having such great conversations. I always have the best combos with you. And I felt exactly like that when you were on my podcast. So you'll have to come on again soon.
Oh, absolutely. I'm
Yes,
always
be around.
game. I'm always game.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it with a family or a friend and rate it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps tremendously in order to bring more awareness and educational resources to our community. For more information and to stay up to date with what I'm doing, you can follow me on Instagram at LatinaAmericaneo. And if you need more information and resources, you can visit my website, latinamericaneo.org. I'm Kevin Munoz. This has been the Leo Podcast, and I'll see you next time.